Merry Christmas, everyone. Service is just about to start. There are a few things we want to let you know before we get started. If you're new with us today, we want you to feel at home and know that this is a safe place to explore your faith and experience God. For us, church is so much more than just a weekend service, and we want you to know that there's a place perfect for you at Fountain Springs. One of the best ways you can get connected with us is to fill out the connection card in the seat back in front of you. Take that card out sometime during the service and fill out as much information as you feel comfortable sharing. And then, after the service, drop that card off at our Next Steps area for a gift that's our way to say we're glad that you've joined us today. And that's it. Later this week, one of our leaders will connect with you. An incredible way to stay connected with our community, receive incredible resources and opportunities, is by downloading our app. From events and workshops to message notes, sermons, and weekend set lists, you can find all you need in one place. Download the app today on any mobile phone app store. Fountain Springs Kids is dedicated to partnering with parents to lead children to become fully devoted followers of Christ. Through age-specific lessons, activities, and small groups, your children, 6 weeks to 5th grade, learn about biblical truths and real-life application. Don't miss this great opportunity to help your children learn more about God's love. Check out FS Kids this weekend. Wherever you are in life, you have a purpose. And we hope today we can help you along that journey through experiencing and connecting with God in a real and authentic way.
Well, good evening and welcome to Fountain Springs Church. We're so glad you're with us tonight. Would you stand with us as we sing together? Try this with us. Joy to the world, the Lord is come. Let earth receive her King. Let every heart prepare him room. And heaven and nature sing. And heaven and nature sing. And heaven and heaven and nature sing. Joy to the world, the Savior reigns. Let men their songs employ, while fields and floods, rocks, hills and plains, repeat the sounding joy, repeat the sounding joy, repeat, repeat the sounding joy. All right, here we go. Come on. He rules the world with truth and grace, and makes the nations prove the glories of his righteousness, and wonders of his love, and wonders of his love, and wonders, wonders of his love. Glory to God in the highest. Let heaven and nature sing. Repeat the sounding joy. Repeat the sounding joy. joyful and triumphant. Oh, come ye to Bethlehem. Come and behold him, born the King of angels. Oh, come let us adore. Oh, come let us adore him. Oh, come let us adore him, Christ the Lord. Sing choirs of angels, sing in exaltation. Sing, all ye citizens of heaven above. Glory to God, glory in the highest. Oh, come let us adore him. Oh, come let us adore him. Oh, come let us adore him, Christ the Lord. Hail the Savior's birth, hail our God most high, King of all the earth, everlasting light. Hail the Savior's birth, hail our God most Can we thank him for that today? Yeah. Well, thank you so much for singing with us. You guys can go ahead and grab a seat.
Christmas Eve is just around the corner, so be sure to reserve your seats for one of our services across both locations on December 20th, 22nd, 23rd, and 24th. This time of year can mean so much for so many here in the Black Hills. It can be a perfect time to invite one of your friends, family, or coworkers to join you here to help them start growing in a relationship with Jesus. We hope you and someone dear to you will join us as our family shares Christmas Eve services together. David, our lead pastor, will be up shortly to share today's message. So if you've checked your child into our kids ministry, be sure to have your phone on vibrate just in case they need to get a hold of you. Also, if you have a child with you and they're getting a bit restless, we have a room just off the lobby where they can roam around freely and you can still share in our experience with us. Thank you to all of you who serve weekly, give generously, and pray consistently. God truly is using you to make an impact as we all go through life together, showing the Black Hills who Jesus is.
Well, we met in Brookings, South Dakota, attending South Dakota State University in 1982, and we were married 3 years later in March of 1985 in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. After we moved to Rapid City, we have really enjoyed raising a family with 5 children, but in between that time, we had some setbacks. We had a daughter that was born that passed away, and then we also had a miscarriage before Reagan was born.
And our daughter that passed away's name was Kara.
Yes. And so we've had a mixed bag of experiences as we've lived through our marriage together and had challenges, and we felt that has made us stronger, you know, bringing God into it as we've had challenges. We've been attending Fountain Springs Church for probably about 4 years now, something like that, and that coincides with about the time that Julie had left the teaching business, and then we have felt a need, a bit of a void there in trying to figure out what we really want to do and what we want to get out of life, and hence we embarked on doing some training with and then obtaining a foster care license, and then we jumped in with both feet, and so that has really brought us to, you know, the connection with children that are in need in the community.
Well, as a child, I always wanted to have a lot of children, and growing up, wanting to be a mother, having my family, working with special needs students that sometimes kind of fell through the cracks, and kind of being motherly to them when they were at school. I actually had children that were in foster care that were in my class, so I knew some of what they were going through also. But that's just one more thing that really solidified the need to come out of our comfort zone, open our home, and allow other children that need us to come and live with us.
Well, we became licensed at the beginning of August in 2015. We were kind of surprised to receive our license at that time because we were told the process would probably take longer, but there was a huge need at the time, and so they rushed through our licensing process and got us certified, and the day that we got certified, we had a placement of 5 children that came into our house. It was truly a unique experience having children that you know, had less boundaries and had a complete different background than what we were used to, and we embraced them, and we have had 3 of those children with us ever since that time, and also since that time we have had about 80 other children that we've hosted in our house in foster care, a lot of them through emergency services and such. So we've brought a lot of children into our house, cared for them, and we find that the unconditional love just really goes a long ways with each and every one of those children.
And one thing that we hear a lot from people is they say to us, well, I could never be a foster parent. I couldn't give them back. I couldn't let them move on. But foster care is about reunification. It's about our community coming together, our church community, and helping these parents heal so that these kids can go home. If we didn't take that risk, I'm not afraid to grieve, but I am afraid of what would happen if people didn't take the risk to step out and love these children. And we are strong believers that, you know, God called us to come in and step up and help these kids, and there will come a time when we won't have children in our home, but we will still be involved with foster care. God tells us to be his hands and feet, and what better way for us to be his hands and feet is to care for God's children, because the children that we bring into our home are his children. They're our children as a society. So we feel really strongly that we need to step up. Not necessarily every person needs to be a foster parent, but there are things that we can do as a community to connect with children that are in foster care, whether it be embrace a family that has children in their home, or be a Sunday school teacher and help them through that. Some of these children that come into our home are traumatized, and to come into a church that is welcoming and loving to them, not even knowing their situation, but is welcoming to them is huge for us. And that's one of the reasons why we feel very comfortable bringing our children into to Fountain Springs, is because they've always been welcome here. To know that they can come here, it's like our safe place for these children.
Isn't that a beautiful story? Yeah? The family, they're real, by the way. I know when you hear the numbers and you're like, some of you literally stopped listening as soon as you heard 80. And you're like, 80 kids, 80. And one of my favorite parts in that story, in case you missed it, I don't want you to miss it. Julie says, not everyone is supposed to be a foster parent. I think sometimes when you hear, you're like, many of us are feeling guilty, even immediately, like, oh, am I supposed to do that? I love what she says because it's very mature and it's very correct. Not all of us are supposed to be foster parents, but we're all supposed to be involved in some way. And so here's what we're doing as a church. I just want to bring something to light. Whether you know about it or not, you need to know about it. There are some breakdowns going on that revolve around and affect kids. So we as a church have decided this. Let's put, quite literally, our money where our mouth is when we say Kids Matter. So we have put together a designated fund called the Kids Matter Offering just during this Christmas season. It's only going to be available where you can give directly to this Kids Matter Offering from now till the end of the year. If you go past the end of the year, you miss out. You can't be a part of it because the funds need to go to multiple places, and I want you to know what's going on. Here's some of the breakdowns. The foster care system in our area, the organizations that are facilitating this and doing this do not have the resources that they need to do it as well as it should be done. And I know some of us have feelings that, well, let the government take care of that, let them fund that, and we can spend some time over coffee sometime talking about that, but I think that the church should also be financially involved, where we help organizations who are doing incredible things in the foster care world. And so the Kids Matter Offering, a portion of it will go to that. There's other portions, though. If you don't know this, at the West location, for the kids ministry, there are things breaking down. I talked about this a week ago, but in South Dakota, we pride ourselves on if something breaks, we duct tape it. And that takes it at least another little bit further down the road, right? Well, we've done that already. It's time to replace not just the duct tape, but the equipment that so you and I, we need to get involved in making sure the kids have what they need so we get to show them who Jesus is. That's happening in the West. At East, it's a different problem if you don't know what it is. They don't have enough space at East. And if you didn't hear it, all the East people just said amen. There's tons of kids, which is awesome, isn't it? Tons of kids going to church on Sundays at East, and we need more space for them, so we have to actually tear some walls down, put some walls up, create some more space. That Kids Matter offering will remedy all that I just told you. All those problems will remedy that to where I can tell you, if we're able to actually get to the $200,000 that's going to require to do all that I just told you, if we can do that, I'm talking 6 months from now, we've made a huge, significant impact in the lives of kids. And you and I don't have to pat ourselves on the back. What we know is that the kids matter and we did something about it. So if you're like, how do I do this? You can give now. You can tune me out the rest of our time together, and you can go on your phone. You can give that way. You can go to the next steps and ask them for help. If you're more of a sentimental person, you're like, I want to wake up Christmas morning, and I want to give to this. That's totally cool. Just don't wait till the year passes, okay? We good? Okay. You're leaving me a little insecure on that, but that's fine. We talk about as a church that it's important that we give. Giving is a value of our church, but it's not the only value. We talk about loving other people, and that involves inviting people. If you don't know this, it's time for our Christmas service. If you've lost track of time, Christmas is almost here. We as a church are offering 13 services. 13 services for you and me to invite people to. So this card, you should have one. It's basically a reminder for you, but I want you to tell you, if you don't know this, you need to get tickets to go to the Christmas service. It's not because they cost something for those of you who are cheapskates. You're like, what in the world? No, they're free. They're to guarantee you a seat, because if you haven't been around long enough, can get crazy around Fountain Springs. So we want to make sure that you have a seat, that you don't have to come already and you're like, hey, we chose this service, but when you show up, there's no seat for you, because that has happened before. I encourage you, if you've waited till now, yeah, it's okay. There's still tickets, but you need to get them, and you need to get them ASAP. So here, you know someone, one, that you can invite. I encourage you to invite them. And if you're like, well, what if they throw something at you? Well, duck when they throw it. You know someone, one person in your life that you could say, you could actually bring it up, and you can blame me if you want to, but you can say, hey, pastor suggested that I invite you to our Christmas service. I think you ought to. I'm doing it like crazy, and it's fun watching people's reactions, because some of them don't know what to say to the pastor when they say, hey, you want to come to Christmas? Invite some folks, okay? It's going to be awesome. We're going to talk about Jesus. It's a great time together. But let's finish the series we've been doing, Christmas Feels. If you've not been a part of this series, let me strongly recommend that you go watch the previous weeks. We've been having I'd call it a very honest conversation. The Christmas story is awesome, but at times can we say that the songs that we sing talk about it's the most beautiful time of the year, and we go into Christmas oftentimes going, it's supposed to be the most beautiful time of the year, but internally there's stuff going on. So for Christmas, we get around with high expectations of here how it should be playing out, but it's not playing out that way. So we as a church thought, hey, instead of saying, hey, everyone fake having peace and joy and happiness, how do we really get there? Here's the question. Here's the question that's kind of, well, I would say it's led us. What do we do when life doesn't go our way? And I would say, and it's Christmas time. What do we do when work or a relationship or financially or future-wise, you're like, it's not what I hoped it would be. But it's Christmas. I'm supposed to be happy. I'm supposed to smile. And some of us are like, the only way to get to smiling is more sugar cookies. And I know that. I've tried that before. But many of us are faking it or medicating it, that we don't feel what we think we ought to feel during Christmas. But this even goes further than Christmas. You know that. You're intelligent enough to know that we're talking about not just Christmas, but life. Let's not be a church who fakes it. So what does Christmas have to do with this? Well, Jesus read this in church, and it has everything to do with Christmas. He has sent me to heal the brokenhearted. I got to tell you, I've been dwelling on this, obviously, for over a month now. I think it's a very powerful part of the Bible. He has sent me. He sent me. So Christmas, Jesus arrives, and you're like, why did he arrive? Is it all about this baby? Is it all about like the shepherds and the magi and the manger and all that? Is it? No. Jesus was sent to heal the brokenhearted. That's why we're talking about this. So we've had some very direct sermons lately where we have talked about when life doesn't go your way, and that involves when you've lost someone or something very valuable in your life and it broke your heart. What do? We've talked about that. We've even talked about as far as what do you do when someone hurts you? And you have to spend time with that person, maybe even around Christmas. And how do we even go about doing this when someone actually hurts you and you've got this broken heart? But Jesus came to heal the brokenhearted. We've got one more thing to talk about, just so you know. It's very personal. Here's how I would sum it up. I screwed up. What do you do when you say that? What do you do when that's a part of your life? When it's not someone hurt you, or you've lost someone, what if it's so personal that your broken heart is because you screwed up? Let's just help each other. I think we need to help each other. Just based by your faces. Here we're going to go. I got a question for you. If you have ever screwed up in life, would you please raise your hand? Okay, look around. We all need this sermon, okay? I just want you to know, because I think oftentimes we're like, I think I'm the only one who's ever screwed up. No, you're not. Most of us should have been like this. Can I raise more? I'm just going to hold it up the rest of the sermon. So we've all screwed up. We've all screwed up, every one of us. So we're on even playing ground right now. Now, I think it helps for you to understand how Pastor has screwed up, because I've got, more stories than we've got time. One in particular just came to my mind very fast when I was thinking about this. I grew up in Indiana. part of my life. Our house that we lived in had a huge front yard. When I say huge, it was a long gravel driveway all the way out to the road. But in between the house and the road were tons and tons and tons of giant trees. I remember them because I had to rake the leaves for them, and I hated it. I mean, you could hardly see the road. There was so much distance between the house and the road and so many trees. And so what I'm about to tell you, you're immediately going to be like, and you're our pastor? This doesn't make sense, but just follow me. This is when I was younger. And so I would, on a regular basis, go out to the very front yard right by the house and aim directly towards the road and hit golf balls. I didn't see a problem with it. Now, no, just so you know, for those of you, like, it didn't go all the way to the road that I'm aware of. But I know, I saw most of them it would get hit by trees, knocked down, and then I would go get the balls and do all that. So I would do it. I loved playing golf growing up, and it was fun for me. But I remember one particular day I was out there doing that, and a friend of my dad's showed up. I saw him pulling up into the driveway, so I stopped hitting the golf balls. And he parked over there to the far side, I think because he saw me hitting golf balls. And he came in, and he and my dad went somewhere. I don't know where, but my dad, on the way, when he was leaving, he said, hey, while we're gone, don't hit any golf balls. So I was like, oh, okay. All right, Dad. I interpret that, when I can't see you any longer as you've pulled away, right? That's how kid. So they leave. I tee one up. And I'm not joking. The first one I decided to hit. I didn't know it was, I didn't do well in physics, but I didn't know that a ball could actually be, I could swing that way, but that it could go out about an inch and then directly to the right. And it did. I'm telling you the truth. This is not an exaggeration. And the ball went out just a little bit, directly to the right, but it stopped. It didn't go into the neighbor's yard because, well, the Lexus parked there stopped it. My dad's friend's Lexus. And when you've screwed up before, can we be like really honest right now in church? Usually when you screw up, don't you immediately assess the situation where you're going, can I get out of this? Am I the only one? I don't care when it is. I don't care if you're a 40-year-old pastor, you're like, okay, I did that. What's the damage here? Is this going to be like get sued damage? Or can we, and I looked, and there was no way out of this. It was a perfect imprint right on, yes, the metal of the door. And I was like, there's no way. Yes, I did go over there and rub it. There was no way out of this screw up. And of course, I began to dread. When you screwed up, don't you immediately begin to just think less of yourself? You immediately begin to go like, why didn't I listen to my dad? Why? And then I'm competitive. How did I hit a shot that bad? I'm better than this. But you begin to have these problems with yourself because you screwed up. And of course, my dad and his friend got home, and I knew there's no way out of it. So I was too afraid to go to my dad's friend. So I went to my dad, pulled him to the side, and I was like, I think he probably saw it in my face, just like something's going on. And I said, hey, I know what you said, but here's what I did, and here's the damage. And my dad didn't yell. He was a good dad. But by the end of that conversation, I'm crying to my dad, feeling like an idiot. Feeling like, you told me not to. I did it anyways. This guy's going to hate you, Dad. He's going to hate me. This feeling of value began to change inside of me. I think you know what I'm talking about. When you screw up, you begin to say, I think something's wrong with me. So that's why I think it's important for you and I to all raise our hands. When I ask you, have you screwed up? Yeah. And let me tell you something about screw-ups. I think this is important. Our screw-ups can make us feel like we're worthless. At least in the moment. You feel like, I don't think I'm as valuable anymore, at least to this person where I've screwed up. But maybe even goes deeper than that, where you begin to think about your screw-ups and you begin to think that they are defining you. And in fact, if you let it stay there long enough, this feeling of worthlessness begins to turn into some shame. I won't make you raise your hand on that one. But I think that all of us would raise our hands if I said, have you ever felt ashamed? Have you ever felt the feeling and the toxic hurt of shame? Most of us have had a moment there. Shame. It's nasty if you don't know that. And you need to know something about us. Many of us right now are wallowing in our shame. And we have these broken hearts right now. And it's affecting our relationships, our jobs, our schooling. It's affecting everything. If you've ever wondered, like, okay, shame. Sounds bad. We talk about it bad, and it is bad. What does it do? And I thought we need to take this just one extra. And usually when you screw up, if not dealt with, if left unresolved, that screw up turns into shame, which then you begin to believe the lie that not only did you screw up, but you can never be who you should be. And this is all about Christmas. If you've ever felt this, one, I'll tell you, you're normal. Your pastor has felt this before. I've told you the story before where I wondered if I could ever be a pastor again. We all have, I think, our stories of where we've wrestled with, can I be who God wanted me to be, or have I jeopardized that so bad? Have I not done what I'm supposed to do so poorly? Have I led myself to this shameful, I just can't be who God wishes I was? Can we just, let's also bring something up. Sometimes it's not our screw up. It's someone else's screw up around us. Perhaps your parents messed up so bad, you've wondered if you could be who you should be. Maybe someone hurt you, abused you, and shame leaked in. And because of someone else's actions, because of someone close to you, or that you valued, or that you looked up to, they screwed up, but you owned some of the shame. That's why I can bring up shame, and whether you've screwed up or not, I think all of us identify a little bit with the feeling of shame, whether it's us who screwed up or not, in that sense of worthlessness. All of us battle that. And we have the Christmas story to help. In fact, it might be one of the favorite parts I have of the Christmas story. I know I'm supposed to tell you that my favorite part of the Christmas story is baby Jesus. This is one of my favorite ones. I'll show it to you. And there were shepherds living out in the fields nearby, keeping watch over their flocks at night. Every time I read this now, I actually have a difficult time reading through what I'm going to read to you. I get pretty emotional, so I'm just going to apologize just right off the bat. And I'm not sure that someone has taught you the significance of this in the Christmas story. I mean, I know in our nativity scenes, there's the shepherds and they're cute. If you've ever been to a kid's Christmas pageant, it's like the cutest part, the little kids. And we love that part, especially if your kid was a sheep. You're like, that's so cute, right? But there's so much meaning in what really happened in the Christmas story. So the Christmas story, there's these shepherds. I want you to know why this is weird, because you may not know why it's weird. Do you know that the shepherds in that day and time were considered worthless people? They did a job, but they were considered worthless. Let me explain to you, because what I'm about to explain to you will even bring up some memories of our nation in racism. So just listen. The shepherds there were 6 vocations you could have in Jewish culture, that if you had one of the 6, you were considered worthless. One of the 6 was being a shepherd. You were worthless to people. They ignored you. Literally, you could walk up to someone and talk to them, and they'd be like, why are you talking to me? Shepherds were seen as unclean people because, just so you know, they were not clean people. Just walk yourself into their life of living where, well, they lived with sheep out in the middle of nowhere. And they didn't have showers every day. So if you need me to describe what is on their hands, I can. Blood, poop, and dirt, and more poop, and everything's nasty. These shepherds were seen as worthless people because they were not clean people. And in fact, let me tell you more. Do you know that if a shepherd witnessed a crime, they could not go to court and testify on behalf of the issue because they were that worthless to people? If your only witness was a shepherd, you're going to lose. During the Christmas story, there's a census going on. People are coming to town to register. Shepherds didn't register. Shepherds were considered worthless. People ignored shepherds. Sure, they bought their sheep from them. But they weren't your friends. If anyone ever stole anything, you know who was first accused usually? Shepherd. Because they were often not wealthy, and they were seen as worthless. So when you look at your nativity sets, I want you to know that however many shepherds you've got in your nativity set, you need to know they were social outcasts. You know what really, really makes me mad? Do you know the shepherds weren't allowed to go to church? They weren't allowed. If shepherds ever tried to go to the synagogue and to actually worship, they were turned away because they were seen as unclean people. Shepherds weren't even allowed to go worship. That's why the Christmas story is powerful. An angel of the Lord appeared to them. You there yet? These worthless, scum of the earth people in the eyes of most Jewish people. An angel of the Lord appeared to them. And the glory of the Lord shone around them, and they were terrified. This crew of shepherds who were not allowed to even go to church, not allowed to worship God, all of a sudden in our Christmas story, this really happened. God says, I want to talk to you. Have you ever felt worthless? Have you ever felt undeserving? I think the shepherds probably felt that way. And all of a sudden, this angel of the Lord is there to tell them something. You know the news you're going to be sharing, right? I mean, you know the angel's like, guess what? You're about to be witnesses to the Savior. I mean, this is good news. This is amazing good news. I mean, think about how you and I disseminate information. If you've got some big news, you pay attention to who you tell first, second, third, fourth, don't you? Katie and I, as many of you know, but some of you don't, we're expecting our fourth kid. We're excited, but you better believe who we told first mattered. And then who we told second, right? You know that. If you get the job you've dreamt of, you don't call up people that you don't even know. Hey, guess what? You go to people that you value, that you like, that are important to you, and you share this information, right? So God's like, I'm about to intervene in all of mankind and save everybody. I'm about to bring forgiveness. Who do I want to tell first? Who do I want to tell first? Well, I need to tell mom because that's important. Tell dad, okay. But do you realize the first non-family member that got the news were the dudes who couldn't even go to church? It gets better. But the angel said to them, do not be afraid. I bring you good news that will cause great joy for all the people. Today in the town of David, a Savior has been born to you. He is the Messiah, the Lord. My favorite part, underlined it for you. To you. Because you know the shepherds, you know how they probably would have initially heard the information? What? There's a Savior? Who for? Because they couldn't even vote. They didn't count as a witness. They couldn't even go worship. So when God shows up and blows their mind by telling them even the news, they're like, I wonder who this is for. Oh, people are going to be so excited. But God sends an angel and says, hey, I want you to know first, and I want you to know this is all about you. Huh. Have you ever felt worthless and someone showed you some value when you felt that worthlessness, that shame, that I don't deserve this? Have you ever had someone with authority say, I see you? If you have, you know exactly that it feels like something that's almost indescribable. If you've ever written a letter to the president, now let's not get too political here, but I remember growing up, and I remember one class, we all wrote letters to the president. And I remembered, I thought, he's going to read this. What am I going to say to him, right? Then I grew up and was told that it probably never made it to his desk. It probably, it arrived, and a staff member probably read it, and I'm not going to get a response from him, or if I do, it's going to be a bit of a form letter. Well, I read a story about a kid who wrote a letter to President Eisenhower. I want to show you the letter because it's significant. The kid's name was John. I don't know if you can see this, but there's dots around it. It's written in Braille. John was blind, and he had someone lend him the machine to be able to send the president an actual letter. If you want to know what the letter contained, actually some advice for the campaign trail, which I thought was funny. He sent the letter. The reason I'm telling you this story, as you probably already suspecting, he got a response from the president. And this is real. The president, not a staff, but the president wrote back, Dear John, I can't tell you how pleased I was to receive the letter you wrote me in Braille. And he goes on, just very kind letter. I think many of us right now have experienced such a screw up in our life, whether it was ourselves or someone else, that we're wondering, listen very closely, if the prayers and the conversations that we're having with God are going to God or his staff. Wondering, when I talk to God, does it go to him? Does he see me? I think many of us wrestle with the stuff, the messes in our lives, and we wonder, have we lost some of God's attention? And in fact, I even get accused of this, which is funny. Like some people will think a pastor has, a special red phone in the office, where I've got this direct line to God. And I think there's some jokes about that, but I think some of us actually believe that based on how good you've been or the least amount of screw-ups you've got in your life is directly linked to, can you talk to God about the real stuff? And not only can you talk to him, but does he talk back? And how does that work? And I think many of us in the midst of our screw-ups have a question. Have you ever felt like God won't respond to you? I think many of us have. I think many of us look at what's happened in our lives, where we come from, the worthlessness that we feel for whatever reason, and we wonder, do I get to talk to God? Do I get to have an actual relationship with him? That's what shame will tell you, is like, no, he's not going to respond to you. I'm not talking to you. Until you start going to church every weekend and start serving and giving and stop cussing and stop chewing or whatever, even as soon as you stop doing all these things, well, as soon as you do that, then God will respond to you and start talking to you, and you'll have this awesome relationship. But you got to get good first. Those lies that you're told are coming from the devil, just so you know. The devil in the Bible is described as someone who says things about us and to us that aren't true. He's called an accuser. Let me show you. For the accuser of our brothers and sisters has been thrown down to earth, the one who accuses them before our God day and night. This is in Revelation, which I know a lot of us don't even read Revelation. We get scared by it or intimidated by it or it seems complicated. But it talks a lot about the end times, but not just end times, about churches. It talks about stuff we need to know. And I want you to know this, that if you have bought into this idea that you are not worthless, it's an accusation the devil's thrown at you. If you feel like you aren't good enough, that you are not valuable, that's an accusation. And many of us have misinterpreted something. We've misinterpreted guilt, and we've grabbed onto shame, and we don't actually know the difference. Most of us don't know the difference between guilt and shame. And I thought, well, let's talk about this for just a brief time. Here's the difference. Guilt. I did something bad. All of us raised our hands, just so you know. Shame is I am bad. See the difference? I created a problem. Every one of us at some point in our lives has created a problem. But shame says, I am the problem. I made a mistake. But some believe I am a mistake. You see the difference between guilt and shame? Guilt, I don't think is bad. I mean, if you do something you shouldn't do, guilt is one of those good alarms for you and I both that says, hey, something didn't go right and you need to correct this. Shame's the bad one. Shame's the one that begins to twist your identity and tell you something that's not true. So I'd like to correct something. Shame never comes from God. If what I just described to you as shame is something you're like, I think that's me. I think I've bought those lies. I've taken those accusations and made them personal. I want you to know shame does not come from God. Mm-mm. So stop buying those lies. The shepherds give us some more. They give us more than, do you feel worthless? Do you feel like a lesser person? Okay, that's okay. Now I identify with the shepherds. This is good. It makes me feel a little bit better. They have more to offer than that, okay? Based on geography, if you don't know this, Jerusalem and Bethlehem are very close to each other. That you can see one from the other, if you want to know. Bethlehem, where Jesus was born, correct? Are we clear on that? We've sang enough songs, right? We've read the story. Well, what we believe geographically is that the shepherds who would have been informed about the birth of Jesus were near Bethlehem. And if you don't know anything about shepherds near Bethlehem, they were slightly different than regular shepherds because they raised sheep like other shepherds. However, those sheep were specifically raised to be taken to the temple in Jerusalem for sacrifice. Do you see the irony in this? The guys who weren't allowed to worship, who are kicked out of church, are responsible for raising the very lambs that would be sacrificed in the church? And if this is kind of weird, like I'm bringing up sheep and sacrifice, here's what the shepherds have to show us, and I think it's found in the Bible. It's better said in the Bible than me telling you. In fact, according to the law of Moses, nearly everything was purified with blood. I know at first glance, if this is your first time hearing this or seeing this, you're like, what? For without the shedding of blood, there is no forgiveness. Without the shedding of blood, there is no forgiveness. So I know a lot of times, especially today, where someone does something wrong, we're like, you know what, I forgive you, no big deal. No, it's always a big deal. Sin is always a big deal. That's one of the problems we have in our society now is we don't think sin is a big deal because sin is so common. It's always a big deal. The Bible will tell you that sin leads to death. And this says, if you don't know the history, that since Adam and Eve first sinned, an animal had to die because, sacrifice had to happen to pay the penalty for that sin. So for years upon years upon years, if you ever sinned, you had to bring oftentimes a sheep, the best sheep that you ever had, the perfect sheep, and you would bring it to church, and the priest would sacrifice it, and the blood was proof that a death occurred. And you could leave going, my sins are forgiven, because our best sheep was just sacrificed. That was the law. The shepherds invited by God, known as outcasts, raised these sheep for sacrifice. But Jesus changes everything. Let me show you. The law of Moses was unable to save us because of the weakness of our sinful nature. So God did what the law could not do. If you're grossed out and like, this sacrifice thing you're talking about is weirding me out, I understand. It is weird and inadequate. So God did what the law could not do. He sent his own son in a body like the bodies we sinners have. And in that body, God declared an end to sin's control over us by giving his son as a sacrifice for our sins. He did this so that the just requirement of the law would be fully satisfied for us, who no longer follow our sinful nature, but instead follow the Spirit, God's Spirit. If I lost you, we're talking about the shepherds who raised the sacrifice that would be offered for the forgiveness of our sins. And then Jesus arrives. And the first non-family members that get the news are the ones who spend day and night with the sacrifice. See, the shepherds, I think, had moments of feeling worthless. And I think you and I have wrestled with this. So it leads us to actually, who do we run to? Who do we spend our time with? I think there's two. You choose one. I think you either spend your time with shame or you spend your time with Jesus. I think the Christmas season brings up some honest conversations that you and I need to deal with, whether you want to or not, whether you're in the mood to deal with it or not. I think the Christmas story brings up more reality than we give it credit for. Sometimes we glorify it and we let it be this beautiful, pristine story about the coming of a baby known as Jesus. But it's more than that, church. It's more than that. If you have ever screwed up and you have ever acknowledged that you actually need forgiveness, you're either going to deny the forgiveness and live in the shame of your screw up, or you're going to go to Jesus and say, Jesus came as the perfect sacrifice for my sins. He did what the law could not do, what religion could not do. That's why the Bible calls Jesus often the Lamb of God. He let himself be sacrificed for you and I. So what have you been owning lately? That forgiveness from Jesus or the shame? I think it brings us back to where we've spent a lot of time in this whole series. Jesus said he was sent to heal the brokenhearted. So whether your broken heart is because of someone you've lost, a job that you've lost, maybe some schooling that you aren't a part of anymore, maybe someone hurt you and that has wrecked your heart, but maybe this weekend is a bit more in your world. Maybe you screwed up or someone screwed up around you and shame has been knocking on your door nonstop and you're like, this is breaking my heart. If it is, it's time to ask God to heal your broken heart. And what better time than before we meet together again for Christmas to go to God. So here's what we're going to do. We've been doing it the whole series. I'm about to pray for you. That's really what I'm going to pray for you. But rather than you feeling like you have to sit there in your seat and say, okay, I'm going to be prayed for, perhaps this moment is more for you to have a conversation with God, for you to talk with God. And so here's the deal. I grew up in a church, and we are that kind of church now that we have what's called an altar. Up front, it's not glorified. You come and you kneel in front of the stage, not bowing to anyone, but having a moment with God. Oftentimes, physically, we need to do more than sit in our seat. We need to get up and go kneel in the presence of God. And so I want you to know, as I pray, you are invited, if you'd like to, if you need to deal with whether it's shame or pain that you've caused in your life or someone around you, that we come and we just talk to God. And perhaps your conversation is as simple as, I'm listening, God, my heart's broken. Will you heal? So I'm going to pray. And then we're going to sing a song. While I pray, you are invited, even as I pray, to come up front if you'd like, to stand up where you're at, to sit down, take whatever posture you like. But I wanted you to know, as what's been said over years upon years, the altar is open should you want to take advantage of it. Okay, let me pray for you. God, I pray for every single one of us who has a broken heart. God, I just going to come straight to you. Lord, I pray in the name of Jesus that whatever has broken our heart, whether it's been us or someone else, God, would you begin to heal our broken hearts? God, for those of us who are wrestling with even our own screw-ups, the decisions that we have made that have wounded other people, that have hurt even ourselves, God, would you forgive us? Would you help us to even forgive those around us who have screwed up? Help us to give them mercy and grace. But God, we're going to spend some time with you. We're going to spend some time with you, and we're going to talk to you, and we're going to listen to you. God, I pray in this time together that we have remaining that you will begin to heal our broken hearts. God, help us to be honest, and help us to be open. We invite you, Lord, to do a work in our souls. We love you so much. We pray this in your name. Amen.
Lost, but he brought me in. Oh, his love for me. Oh, his love for me. Who the Son sets free, oh, is free indeed. I'm a child of God. Yes, I ransomed me, his grace runs deep. While I was a slave to sin, Jesus died for me. Yes, he died for me. Who the Son sets free, oh, is free indeed. I'm a child of God. Yes, I am. In my Father's house, there's a place for me. I'm a child of God. Yes, I am. I am chosen, not forsaken. I am who you say I am. You are for me, not against me. I am who you say I am. I am chosen, not forsaken. I am who you say I am. You are for me, not against me. I am who you say Let's sing that bridge one more time. I am chosen. I am chosen, not forsaken. I am who you say I am. You are for me, not against me. I am who you say I am. I am chosen, not forsaken. I am who you say I am. You are for me, not against me. I am who you say I am. I hope you'll know that today, that you are beloved by God no matter what you've done, no matter what mistakes we may have made in the past. We are beloved by God. I hope we'll remember that this evening. Well, thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you next weekend for our Christmas services. Have a good one.